Good morning, everybody. I think we have some visitors with us. I'm certainly thankful for that. I'm not going to embarrass you or make you stand up or anything, but I hope you will give us a chance to say hello to you after we conclude here in a little while. Let us get to know you a little bit more and hopefully have you come back and not be a visitor anymore. We're certainly thankful for your attendance and everybody's attendance. Do be mindful of those who have been mentioned for prayers, who are not with us for one reason or another, that they will get back to good health if it be the Lord's will. Also, and I'll just echo what has been said now a couple of times, I'll say it for the last time, I hope that you will please make it a point to be here if you can tonight at 5 o'clock in the fellowship hall to hear Ted Knight speak. Ted Knight is a hero of mine. He is the consummate gospel preacher. He's been preaching for a very long time. I've never heard him deliver a sermon that I didn't walk away saying, that was something. He just has such an intricate knowledge of the Bible, a deep knowledge of the Bible after just decades of just devoting his life to the Bible. It just spills out of him. It pours out of him. The man could preach a sermon without any notice, and it's a wonder to behold, and he's a wonderful gospel preacher and a tremendous person. So please be here to support Ted Knight. Hope that you can be. This morning's sermon is one of those sermons that needs to be preached from time to time. It's the kind of sermon that you should probably hear preached to you once every year, maybe once every 18 months, because it's one of those topics, it's one of those ideas that will never go out of style. It will never cease to be relevant. There will always be people who will be sitting in that pew, your pew, and you'll hear that sermon and you'll think, even if it wasn't delivered well, the idea of it will make you say, I'm glad that sermon was given. I needed to hear that because I'm going through that. And then maybe the next time it comes around, you won't be going through it, but someone else will be. There will always be someone, and usually more than one, person in the auditorium who will need to hear this sermon, who needs to know that we serve, or rather needs to know what kind of God that we serve. To put it simply, we serve a God who calms storms. We serve a God who knows our distresses, who knows our hardships, who knows the things that we're going through, who knows the big problems that everyone can see, who knows those 101 little problems that most people don't know about. Maybe you'll confide in somebody and share with somebody, and you can get some short-term satisfaction and relief that way. But God already knows it. And you can always confide in God, and you can always speak to the Lord, and you can always go to Him, and you do go to Him because He occupies this very special role, what we call this morning the storm calmer. What is your storm? I can't answer that. You answer that. You think to yourself, what is your storm? Whether it is self-inflicted because of your own mistakes and the past is catching up to you, whether it is externally inflicted, someone else is going after you and attacking you and hurting you, whether it is just a general circumstance of your life, where it is in your particular part of life, whether it has just been a debilitating disability of any kind that you've been wrestling with for years, if not your entire life. What is your storm? Whatever it is, you're dealing with it. Maybe no one else is, and that can feel very lonely. Maybe you're dealing with it, but even if you alone are, God is a storm calmer. Now, I cannot preach a sermon that could specifically help you with all of your individual storms. I can't do that, because all of our storms are different. What I can do is give you a text from the Bible. It was just read to us a minute ago. I'm going to read it again here in a second. And use that as a template, as an example, as an understanding of the principle that if Jesus can calm this actual literal storm of wind and rain, if He has that kind of mastery, He also can be the master over your life and your proverbial wind and rain storms. So let's use this example as a template for us to have some confidence and some trust in Him, to go to Him when we're battling our own storms. Let me put the entire sermon in a nutshell. The whole thing we're going to talk about this morning. To summarize it in one phrase, what to do when you're freaking out. Now maybe you're not freaking out. That phrase has its own connotation of someone who is in hysterics, who is flapping their arms like mad and is running around like a chicken with his head cut off, or running around like something is on fire. So maybe you're not there yet. Maybe you'll never get there. Maybe you're so beaten down by your storm that you're not running around at all. You're just lying in a corner in the fetal position with the rain just pouring on you. Fine. But for many of us, there is that moment, and it may not last. It may be replaced by the other one, but there is that moment usually when the storm first starts that some hysterics set in. And we don't know what to do. And so we start freaking out. And when we do, the devil, who stirs up the storm, takes advantage of us. So let's address that. The text that was read to us a minute ago, if you'll permit me, let's read it one more time together, just to make sure it's fresh on our minds. It's Mark chapter 4, verses 36 through 41. One of two different accounts in your Bible when Jesus calms a storm in one way or another. This first one is the one we're going to look at, and we will touch on the other one at the end of the sermon. But let's mostly focus our attention here. This is Mark 4, 36 through 41. When they had sent away the multitude, they took him, Jesus, even as he was in the ship, and there were also with him other little ships. And there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship so that it was now full, that is to say, of water. And he, Jesus, was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on a pillow. And they awoke him and said to him, Master, do you not care that we perish? And he arose and rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said to them, Why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? And they feared, that's a different word, they were not afraid exceedingly, they were just in awe exceedingly. And they said one to another, What manner of man is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? I know you've heard this, unless you've never opened a Bible before or been, or surrounded by, the Bible in general. I would dare say probably every person here has heard this. You've seen this depicted in, illustrations. You've had VBSs about this. This is one of those big famous miracles of the Lord. He stands up in the boat. He waves his hand at the storm. He tells it to be quiet, and it does. And if you were in the boat with those disciples, you'd probably have the same reaction. What kind of person is this? This is the beginning of his ministry. They haven't seen a lot of miracles yet. And what they have probably are so small scale compared to this, they seem like two completely different categories. They see this, and they say, what kind of human being is in this boat that even the wind and the waves, even nature itself, hears his voice and submits, sees his gesture of silence and obeys, responds to his command, recognizing him as their master and maker? You'd be in awe as well. But from this very famous account, we apply some proverbial applications. What about my storms? What does the Lord do for me in my storms? Or, as we're going to do with our sermon this morning, what should we not do? What to do when you're freaking out? Well, freaking out is not the thing to do. So what should you not do while you're in the middle of this and freaking out causes these things to happen? Don't do these things when you're in your storm. First of all, don't panic. Let me give you another phrase that really encapsulates this whole sermon. With this one phrase, I'm going to unlock the whole sermon to the point where you might be tempted to just tune out, because once I say this phrase, you'll have heard everything I'm going to say. So hear this phrase, but don't tune out, because I'm going to elaborate on it for the rest of the sermon. But this one phrase is the sermon. Are you ready? If Jesus is freaking out, then you can freak out. That's it. That's the lesson. These disciples are in a boat with their master. A storm comes up. Notice, the fact they're with Jesus does not prevent the storm. They're with the master in the storm. They start panicking. They turn around. They see Jesus in the back of the boat snoring. In the back of the boat, sound asleep. Now, had they turned around and saw Jesus biting his nails, had they turned around and saw Jesus wringing his hands, had they turned around and saw Jesus bug-eyed, eyes shifting left and right, shrugging his shoulders, doing one of these, sorry, hit a button. If they saw that, then they would have every right to freak out. If Jesus is not panicking, you do not have God's permission to panic. If you catch God panicking, by all means join him, because that's the end. It's the end in a way we never thought was possible. It's not possible. He's never going to panic, so you never have an excuse. You never have God's permission to panic. Now you still will, because none of us are perfect. But the disciples looked at Jesus, and they did not learn from the lesson of seeing him sound asleep. The disciples looked at Jesus, and what they should have saw is what they should have been doing. They should have been trusting. Now, when I say don't panic, when I say trust the Lord, when I say look at Jesus and emulate Jesus, what I don't mean is go headlong into danger flippantly. I'm not saying be reckless. I'm not saying be careless. I'm not saying be apathetic of the reality of dangers that do exist and can hurt you. The disciples did not get in a boat to go into a storm. They didn't recklessly sail into bad waters, into stormy weather. It just came upon them. But when it came upon them, as it does sometimes, unexpectedly, uninvitedly, they looked over, they saw their master was not panicking. And that should have been their clue that they're going to be okay. When you are with Jesus, emulate Jesus. Is he calm? Be calm. Is he panicking? No, he's not. So neither should you. Tell me, what does panicking accomplish? And people say it makes them feel better. I'm watching them panic, and I've seen myself when I do it. Nobody's feeling good when you're panicking. People say, well, it's how I get my mind rolling and I get the problem solved. No one has ever solved a problem mid-panic. Panicking does not solve anything. It doesn't help anything. It gets you hot and bothered, short-sighted, and grasping at straws for whatever short-term solution you can grab around you. And it only ends up making the situation worse in the long run. Panicking doesn't make you feel better. Panicking doesn't bring relief. It's the opposite of relief. It's the opposite of being at ease. It's the opposite of being at rest. You're all in a tizzy. You're not thinking clearly, and you're going to end up making more mistake to make it twice as bad. Don't panic. It doesn't help. Trust your Father in heaven. Trust that Jesus is in the proverbial boat with you, and if he's not panicking, neither should you. Second, you're in a storm, don't get discouraged. Jesus, at the end of this text, after he has calmed the storm, after he's calmed the storm, then he turns to his disciples. After he rebukes the storm, he turns to rebuke his disciples. And he says to them, why were you so fearful? Okay, now the text doesn't say discouraged, but you can see how one can lead to the other. And based on what they say in the middle of this reading, which we'll get to next, I think it's pretty clear they were discouraged, that they were pessimistic. So let's just roll with that. Jesus addresses that head on. Why were you like that? Why were you feeling that way? Why were you fearful? And then he answers his own question. How is it that you had no faith? Now here's what I don't want you to take away from this sermon. Because it is a reality of our present day that people of our current generation and generations that live in this world today deal with anxiety. It seems to be more than past generations. It's possible the past generations dealt with it. It just wasn't diagnosed as often. It wasn't recognized as much. People hid those sort of things because they felt weak or small because they admitted something like that. So maybe it's just a more matter of admittance. But it seems like people are more anxious now than ever. People are owning up to being anxious and having actual diagnosed anxiety than ever. What I don't want you to take away from this is if you are suffering from actual anxiety, I don't want you to think that Jesus is saying you are faithless. That if you are a person who gets anxious, and what that means is essentially your mind forces you to dwell on worst case scenarios and to think about worst possible cases and to just stew over them and to stress over them and to worry about them and worry about things that nobody else is worrying about. Even though they are possibly involved in them in your mind, they're not stressing over them because they're not anxious over them. And you're wrestling with this. It's medical. It's mental. It's uncontrollable in that sense. It may be treatable. It may be helpful, but it's uncontrollable to some extent or another. Jesus is not saying you have no faith. What he's talking about, because people who suffer from that kind of anxiety, if you can talk them through it, they can intellectually admit, yes, I know this is a very unlikely scenario. I just can't help myself but stew over it. Okay, that's what anxiety does. It's the mind at war with itself. Jesus is talking about the people who can mentally understand a thing, but who set that aside and just choose to assume the worst. Choose to assume the worst. Not that they are forcing it upon themselves, not that they can't help themselves, but it's they are coming to the conclusion, this is a bad thing, I knew it was going to be bad, and I'm bitter over how bad it is, and now I start attacking, and we'll get to blaming God in a second. But they have that sort of mentality. It's a choice to be anxious in their case. They are looking for a reason to be negative. They are looking for a reason to be despondent. And that, Jesus says, is faithless. Because you can talk to an actual anxious person who is a Christian and say, yes, I know you're dwelling on this negative thing and this hard thing and you're assuming the worst about this, but is God in control? And they will say yes. And is God going to take care of you? And they will say yes. Yes, I know God will, but I still feel. And I wish I didn't. Okay, that is not what Jesus is talking about. These disciples chose to feel this way and chose to take it out on Jesus. So rightly does he say, why do you have no faith? Why did you choose to be fearful? Why did you choose to get discouraged? There's nothing more contagious than discouragement. You're negative, you're dragging people down, other people kind of just like a black hole just fall into that vortex with you. My old mentor, Carol Seitz, used to always say, what is the opposite of discouragement? Encouragement. Who wants you to be discouraged? Who gets encouraged by you being discouraged? The devil. Do not encourage the devil. by being discouraged. Have courage. Have faith. Have confidence. Have trust. All those things are built into this idea of courage. Have courage. Be encouraged. But if you lose your faith, then discouragement will follow. And the only one who will rejoice then is the devil. You're in a storm. Don't panic. That doesn't solve anything. Don't get discouraged, because then you're not looking for a solution. Next thing, don't blame God, as so many do. They turned around, they saw Jesus asleep, and they said, Master, do you not care? Now, I know there's an end to that question. That's next. But just that first half alone is laced with implication. In fact, to take the whole question and to really examine it, this is a rhetorical question. They have the answer in their mind already. What they're really saying to the Lord is, Master, we are going to die. You don't care, and we want to know why. That's what's built into this question. Why don't you care that we're about to die? Is their essential question. So what are they saying there? Forget what they're asking. What are they implying? That God doesn't care. They're going through something, and they're lashing out at the highest possible authority, assuming incorrectly, believing incorrectly that because he is the highest possible authority, then all bad things must come from him. And the Bible doesn't teach that. Can Jesus, let's just break this down in a different way. Let's look at it from a different perspective. Here are these disciples. They're essentially saying, God, we're in this storm. Why have you allowed this storm to happen? Why have you caused this storm to happen? And then from there, one of two conclusions is going to be reached. And the critic, or the devil, and I speak redundantly, will give you both options, because either one are bad. They'll say, A, God's allowing this because God is not very good. Or B, God is allowing this because God is not very powerful. So it's one or the other. Either way, he must not be a God worth serving. So is God not good because he allows this? Does the Bible say that? Does God allow this permanently, or does he stop this? Is God not powerful because this happens? Is he not powerful, or does he stop this? See, at the end of this text, he proves both his goodness and his power, because he stands up, he tells the wind to shut up, and the wind does so. That's power. Oh, but he allows it to happen. So why does God allow it to happen? Why does God calm this storm and not my storm? He calms this one. Why won't he calm mine? And then there's that voice that says, maybe he can't. Maybe he can't. Maybe he won't. So either he's not good or he's not powerful. So can't he? He can. I know he can calm my storm. I know he can calm my storm because he calmed this one. And this one's the template. So he can calm my storm. So then the next question, which is fair to ask, as long as you're prepared to hear the fair answer, the next question is, if he can, why doesn't he calm mine? And from there, the critic or the devil, and I repeat myself, will say, don't worry about the answer. If he doesn't, if he's not, then he's not worth serving, so forget about it. Drop him. Ignore him. Leave him. And that's all the devil wants. But is there an answer? Let's look at it from a different perspective. God allows this storm to come upon his disciples, and then he calms it. What about these same apostles? These same people are later in their life going to be stoned, beheaded, crucified, run through with a sword or a spear, mutilated, boiled alive, and other disciples with them. Why, if God calmed this storm for them, why didn't he calm that storm for them? And if I want to sit here and say, if he can calm their storm, why doesn't he calm my storm? Why don't I stop and ask myself to reflect on all the times that God has calmed other storms? Because they're there. They're just harder to see. They're harder to remember. I don't think about all the times God has calmed the storm. I only think about the storm I'm in right now, and I forget all the clear skies I've had in my life. I only think about the gray ones. And that's not fair to God. What do you want? What am I really saying there? Well, what I want is for God, the person will say, what I want is for God to put me in a bubble where no bad things ever happen to me. To put me in a protective shell, in a place where I can just be, and I'll have no storms, I'll have no hardships, I'll have no suffering. But just me? So I get the bubble, and the rest of you get to suffer? No, they'll say, no, everybody should get a bubble. What God should do is God should have a place where he puts all of his people, where there is no suffering, where there is no bad things, where there is no hardship, that's what God should do. You know what? God did that. It was called Eden. And we walked away from it. We chose to sin. We chose to leave Eden behind. Yes, I know by law he had to excise us. But we forced his hand when we sinned, when we said Eden and the one rule of it was not good enough. So God has already done that. And guess what? He continues to do that because you are Eden today. You, Christian, are the place where God has a relationship with you today. It's just the storms that he calms today are not physical, but spiritual. And so you will get wet, and the boat will fill with water. But you will be right with God because God will be in the boat with you. And sometimes God will calm that storm too, the actual physical one. He proves he can here. Sometimes he won't. And he proves it not here, but with these same people who all died in their storms of persecution for him. But you know what will happen to them? They will rise again, and so will you. And they will give thanks to God who calmed that storm eventually, in his time, in his way. The last thing you need to do, though, in the meantime, is blame God. Because God is not the author of your problems. God is the solution. Who wants you to blame God? Not God, but the devil does. Who wants you to quit? Who wants you to give up? Not God. Who has a vested interest in this storm breaking you? Not the Lord. Who stirred up the waters against you? Not the one who calms it. Master, Master, do you not care that we perish? Not we might perish, not this looks really bad, not I have a bad feeling about this, not I don't know, God, what do you think? You better do something. No, they say, Lord, we are going to die. How do you know? Have you died yet? Lord, tomorrow is the end. The walls are closing in. I have no hope. How do you know? Have you seen tomorrow? Do you hold tomorrow in your hands? Or does God? Not even the devil holds tomorrow in his hands. God holds tomorrow in his hands. The devil may hold your present, and he may wrestle with you, and he may grip your mind with hardships and anxieties, but God holds tomorrow. You don't know tomorrow. These disciples right now, today, thought they were going to drown, and tomorrow they were on dry land preaching his gospel. Why? Because God holds tomorrow. And had they quit, being certain that tomorrow was not coming, look what they would have lost out on. Who wants you to quit? Who wants you to give up? Who has a vested interest in you walking away? And who calms the storms? In one way or another. This is not the only time where Jesus calms a storm. Before we close, very quickly, look at John chapter 6. It's also recorded in Mark chapter 6, but let's look at John's account. John 6, 16 through 21. When the evening was now come, his disciples went to the sea and entered into a ship and went over the sea toward Capernaum. And it was now dark, and Jesus was not come to them. And the sea arose by reason of a great wind that blew. And so when they had rowed about 25 or 30 furlongs, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and drawing near to the ship, and they were afraid. But he said to them, It is I, be not afraid. Then they willingly received him into the ship, and immediately the ship was on the land where they were going. This one is also recorded in Mark 6. Not Mark 4, that was the first one. Mark 6 is the other one. You've probably heard these two events put together like this, in this way. They'll say, sometimes you're in a storm and Jesus calms the storm. And then they'll say, but in the other time, sometimes you're in a storm and Jesus doesn't calm the storm, Jesus calms you. Have you heard that before? I'm not going to knock it. I've probably said it myself. But Jesus calms this one too. It's not as evident in John's account, but in Mark 6, it flat out says, he gets in the boat and the winds stop. He calms that one too. It's just the emphasis is not on that. The emphasis is on him calming the disciples. It's the way he does that, how he gets to them to do that, that I want to end this sermon with. Because here's your takeaway from this text. It's there on the screen behind me. Jesus will not leave you. Are you in the storm? Do you feel alone? You are not. Are you a child of God suffering? I repeat myself. Jesus is there too. Who wants you to forget that? Who wants you not to see him? Because who knows that if you don't look at him and don't find him and don't see him, you will get discouraged. You will blame God. You will quit. Jesus will not leave you in darkness. What does the text say? Jesus wasn't with them. They were on the boat, and it was dark. Now, these men are not strangers to sailing. They are not strangers to storms. They are not strangers to solitude without Jesus. They are not strangers to nighttime. These are grown men. Basically, they're not like 40, but they're old enough. These are adults. They've been in darkness before, but you know what? There's something about darkness that just triggers something primal in each one of us. There's something about darkness. A child, we understand. Of course a child is afraid of the dark. A child gets up in the middle of the night in a stormy night, gets out of their bed when they're scared, comes into your bed, puts one foot here and their head over there, and then they go sound asleep, like a light out. It's the same storm. It's the same darkness, but now they're calm. Why? Because they know they're with you. Before, when they're in darkness and alone, and they feel alone, now they're scared. And we understand why a child is scared of the darkness, because a child hasn't lived long enough to experience a whole lot of things to know what's out there. And so to them, it's just the great unknown, and it's terrifying. They can't see it, so they just perceive the worst. Adults get afraid of the dark. Don't lie. You do. I used to hope I'm not the only one about to admit it, because here I go, I'm about to admit it. I get scared of the dark too. My wife's been out of town with the kids. It's been a completely quiet house. And since half my job as a dad is just turning off light switches, the house has been very dark for days. And when it's nighttime and I'm going to bed, every light is off and it's dark outside, you can't see anything. And then I curl up in that bed all by myself. And then I hear a creak or a pop and I think, well, there's the person who's come to kill me. He's not yet. He's biding his time. But every night, that's what I think. There it is. I come up here, sometimes late on a Saturday to practice. And I look down that very long hallway, and you can't see the end of it because it's dark. But I tell you, I don't imagine, I'm not going to tell you I don't imagine some monstrous thing running out of that darkness toward me. That's my nightmare. We get scared of the dark. Why? We're adults. Yeah, a child gets scared of the dark because they're afraid of the unknown. They don't know what's out there. An adult is scared of the dark because we know what's out there. And it's dark, and so we can't see if it's out there or not. It's just as primal. It's just as real. These disciples are in darkness, and so they're scared. It doesn't make them babies. It makes them human. And their master saw them in darkness and did not leave them in darkness. He went to them. Even if he had to walk on the water of the storm in the middle of the night to get to them, he went to them because he loved them. And so he got to them. It was still dark, but he was with them in the darkness. He didn't leave them alone in darkness. What else? Jesus will not leave you in danger. What does the text say? The sea arose by the great wind that blew. The sea arose and beat against the ship. This is not some minor thing. They're not exaggerating. They're not foolishly imagining. They're not thinking the worst. No, this is the worst. The water is coming in the boat. If nothing changes, the boat's going to sink and we with it. This is a real problem. As I said, these men have been in storms before. They have been in storms they know they can handle. They know they can't handle this one. That's not giving up. That's not quitting. That's just being aware of the reality of life. I'm in a boat. I'm going to sink. If nothing changes, I will die. They're in danger. Jesus sees them in danger. Jesus is not in this boat. Jesus is on the mountain. He sent them off while he went to mourn the death of John the Baptist in the timeline. So he's on a mountaintop overlooking the sea. And the Sea of Galilee, Lake Gennesaret, is not that big. It's not as big as Lake Conway, if that means anything to you. But it's big enough if you're on a boat in the middle of it, in a storm, at night. If I'm on that mountaintop, I'm not seeing you. But I don't have the divine eyes of Jesus. He can see you. And he looked right at them, saw them in danger, and went to them. Even if he has to walk on the water of the storm that brings the danger to get to them, he will do that. He will get there to you. And when he gets in that boat, you're going to be okay. Jesus will not leave you in distress. They start panicking. They see Jesus walking on the sea. I highlighted the wrong part. It should be they were afraid. Because at first they don't recognize Jesus, so this is just another problem. They're afraid, and Jesus has to say to them, "It is me. Be not afraid. It's going to be okay. I'm here now." Now, they're still in danger at this moment. They are still in the storm at this moment. But I will bet you, in that moment, they no longer cared about the danger. I will bet you, in that moment, they no longer felt the distress of the storm. I will bet you, in that moment, instead of seeing the storm, what they saw was their master had come to help them. And with that came calmness and peace. And such a confidence that one of them gets out of the boat and walks on the water to get to him. and only starts to sink when he takes his eyes off Jesus and back on the storm. And the lesson there is simply keep your eyes on Jesus, because the storm will eventually end, but he never will. And if you take your eyes on him who is timeless, then you hand over timelessness for the temporal. You hand over permanent solution for temporary trouble, just stewing over it when it can't help you and you can't solve it, it can just drown you. If you put your eyes on Jesus and take that hand he's reaching down for you, and cared for you will be. And the storm will eventually cease. So what is your storm? I don't know. You answer that one. But I do know who calms it. If you will go to him and give your life, including your storm, to him. He will bear it on the cross, as he has done. Proverbially, he will bear it, has borne it. And we'll take that away from you. If you're not a Christian, become one this morning. Obey the gospel of Jesus Christ. Submit your life to him. Yield to him in recognition of his lordship. You believe that? You willing to tell other people about that? Repent and be baptized. And salvation is yours. Calmness is unlocked for you. You will still have storms. You will still get anxious. You will still be in distress. But you will find Jesus. You will look for him, and you will find him, and you will find the source of calmness. And if you need some help, if you're in your storm as a Christian and you're feeling like you're drowning, help us help you find the hand of Jesus to pull you back up. Whatever your need is, make it known right now. Come as we stand and sing.